So my name is Bivas Bhattacharya, and today's webinar is about upgrading to Angular 10. And I would like to start this with something that might sound like a marketing, shameless marketing message, but there is a reason behind it. So a few weeks back, I started to develop our course for Angular 10 programming. And this, by the way, is a complete overhaul compared to our Angular 8 and other previous courses. So it has many new chapters and labs. So while I was developing this, it occurred to me that there is a lot of information out there about how to develop for Angular 10 and in Angular in general, but there's very little information out there on how to upgrade to a new Angular version. Having worked on a couple of projects, I know that the process of upgrading Angular is not a trivial thing. So I thought the matter needs some discussion, and this is why I proposed a webinar on upgrading to a new Angular version instead of just doing another webinar on introduction to Angular or what's new in Angular 10 and things like that. That kind of information is widely available. So today we're just going to talk about how to upgrade to a new Angular version. And I'm going to do this webinar using completely hands-on. I have no slides. So I'm going to actually take a real life application and which is currently in Angular 8. And I'm going to upgrade that to Angular 10. So let's get started. So let's first go through the application that we'll be upgrading. So the application is about, it's like a database that manages books. So it's like, think of it like a library, community library or things like that. You have books that you can add, delete, edit, and things like that. So it's a very simple application, but it has a backend web service. So the Angular application calls into the backend web service. So let's inspect the application, which is currently in Angular 8, and then we can start to migrate over. So you already have a question, so let's take a look at it. Yes, so this seminar is going to be, it's being recorded and it'll be shared later. You're going to get an email. If you have registered, you're going to get an email and you can watch the video later. And once again, I have no slides to share with you, so it's going to be 100% hands-on work. And I'm to be very honest, I'm a little bit apprehensive because migration to a new Angular is not a straightforward process. And I hope by the end of the presentation, we are able to migrate this application, okay? So it's not something I have tried out before. Things can go wrong. All right, so having said all that, let's get started. First, you're going to review the current application and try it out, see how it works. Then you're going to work on migrating it. All right, so first of all, this is the developer machine. So I have ng installed. Let's take a look at the version of ng. And you will see that it's currently in version 8. So it's 2 versions behind. And I purposely did that because the farther away you are from your target, the more problem you're going to have. So for example, if you're in Angular 9 right now, moving to Angular 10 is a more straightforward process. But I purposely chose an application that's in an older version, which is in Angular 8, and you're going to see that we have to go through some extra steps to move it to Angular 10. So it's going to be very realistic. I purposely made life difficult for me here, but hopefully it'll work out. So we have ng version 8 installed, and the application is in folder called Angular example. So let's load it up. I'm going to open Visual Studio Code. Okay, so then we go to Angular example. Let's open this. And if I go to package.json, you will see that the Angular version we are using is version 8. All right, so everything is in version 8. So that's one thing. And this application also has a dependency on a third-party project called ng Bootstrap. So you can see it over here. We are using a third-party module, and we need to worry about that. And this is the piece I'm most worried about, actually, to be very honest. So this is not something that comes from Angular. This is a third-party project, and we need to upgrade this as well. All right. Having said that, let's take the application for a spin, make sure it's working. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the backend server first. This is the backend web service. By the way, if you have any question, please ask me while I'm doing my work. Don't wait for the end. You don't have to wait for the end. You can ask me a question anytime, and I'll keep an eye out for the questions and do my best to answer them right away. So I'm starting the backend web service. This is the npm start. That's running the backend web service. Now I can start my Angular application. npm start here. So while this is starting up, let me show you the proxy configuration. So I have my proxy configured here. So the Angular application is going to make API calls into /books, which is being proxied over to the backend web service running on localhost 3000. All right. So my Angular application is starting up. So all of this is running on Angular 8. It's a completely Angular 8 environment, including ng and Angular version. Everything is in Angular 8. All right, so the dev server has started up. Let me try it out. Localhost 4200. And so this is what the application looks like. So right now there are 2 books in the library. You can add a new book. I'm adding a new book, and it's making a backend call, and it's getting added. Similarly, I can edit and delete and things like that. All right, so this is also using routing. As you can see, the URL is changing. So this is a fully routed single page application. So it seems to be working fine. So that's something you do. Number one is make sure the application is working. All right. So it is working. That's good news. Now we're going to get started migrating this. I'm going to stop this dev server. We don't need this running. So right now, if I look at Git, I'm on the master branch. There is nothing to commit. So let us go ahead and create a new branch, because if I mess up, I can always go back to master. Feature Angular 10 migration. So I'm going to create a new branch and do all my work there. All right. So the first thing we need to do is upgrade ng itself. So the ng tool is right now in version 8. We need to move this to version 10. So let's do that. So, npm has no straightforward way of updating things to a new major version. We have to write up, literally, we have to uninstall and reinstall. All right, so let's do that. I'm uninstalling Angular CLI, and I will install the latest version after that. Oh, I need to do a sudo. In Linux, you have to do sudo. In Mac or Windows, this is not necessary. Because we are installing a global package, we need to do a sudo. All right, so it's got wiped out. Now I install the latest version of Angular. So you can see that I did an @latest. It's going to go grab the latest version. What happened here? Oh, I didn't do sudo again. My apologies. Okay, so Angular tool is installed. Let me verify again. This should be in version 10 right now. Huh? It is not. This is not a good sign. Let me uninstall again. All right, I think, yeah, so now we have version 10. So actually, this is a good idea anyways. Instead of doing @ latest, you may want to do @ 10, which is the major version. So it's going to go grab version 10 in case version 11 is out or something like that. So this is a better way of doing it anyways. So then I go back into my Angular example project. So now my ng itself is updated to version 10. And now we can start to upgrade the application. So as I said, the application is currently in version 8, and we have to move to version 10. You cannot jump from 8 to 10. You have to go from 8 to 9 and 9 to 10. All right. And in fact, we have to first migrate to the latest version 8. So we have to do first from wherever we are to the latest version 8, and from 8 to 9, and then 9 to 10. Okay. So first we're going to migrate to the latest version 8. The way to do that, so these days the migration tool is, actually before I do that, let me take you to this website. So there is a website called update.angular.io. You should go there first. And so this is the official instructions on how to upgrade. So we are going from version 8 to version 10. So I'm going to choose a medium level application, and it tells you step by step what needs to be done. The couple of things missing here, I find. For example, it doesn't tell you to upgrade the Angular tool itself, which we did so far, and it doesn't, for some weird reason, doesn't mention you to do that. Other than that, it's asking you to update to the latest of Angular 8, and then go to Angular 9, and then move to Angular 10. All right. So I kind of have gone through all this. So we're going to just follow the instructions. But in real life, when you have to do an upgrade, make sure you go to this website, update.angular.io, and follow the instructions. All right. So let us upgrade to the latest version 8. The way to do that is using the ng tool itself. So from the project's root folder, run this command, ng update. And there are two packages you need to update, Angular Core and Angular CLI. So we are moving to the latest version 8. And since this is a local update, I should not have to do sudo here. So this is going to update Angular itself. But remember, there is a dependency on Bootstrap. So this guy is not going to take care of that. That's something we have to do manually. So this, while we're waiting for something to finish, will be an excellent time to have a conversation. You can ask me questions if you have anything. Just type it into the questions window, and I'll be able to answer, see it and answer them. So what does the ng update do? For first thing, so let's take a look at what happened here. So it looks like it's successful, which is very good. If I do a git status, I see that it's only updated package.json. So sometimes ng update also updates your code. It actually goes through your code and does analysis and actually migrates your code as well. So in this case, it didn't have to do that. So if I go back to my Visual Studio Code, and I can see what it did side by side. So I can see that it has gone from 8.1.0 to 8.2.14, which is the latest release of version 8. All right, so that's good. Let me go ahead and commit all this stuff. So it is important that you have no uncommitted code, otherwise ng update doesn't work. It's going to give you an error message. This is one of the reasons I'm making sure I commit all the changes. All right, so we have taken a small baby step in the migration process. All right, now let us try to migrate to version 9 and see what happens. So to go to version 9, I run the same command, but now we are saying ng update to version 9. So I'm explicitly specifying version 9. This is something we have to go through before we can go to version 10. All right, let's keep our fingers crossed, see what happens. So it's proceeding nicely so far. It's almost done. Okay, so the Angular 9 migration worked out well. Now let's see what changes it did. So I go back to my Visual Studio Code, and I see a few more files are now modified. So angular.json, which is the project definition file. It has made some changes there. And if I go to package.json, it has updated to version 9, all the Angular stuff. And if you pay attention to the Bootstrap stuff, it's still in version 5. And I have a feeling this is going to cause problem because now my ng Bootstrap is very old, and we are starting to migrate Angular itself. And remember, ng Bootstrap has dependency on Angular, so at some point this may not work very well. So far so good. Again, there is no changes to the code, but in some cases the migration might actually change your code as well. So just nothing to get nervous about that. It's normal. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and check things in. Git add, git commit, migrate to Angular 9. Okay, now we go to Angular 10. To go to Angular 10, and since Angular 10 is the latest version, I know that I can leave out the target version, or you can say 10 here. It doesn't matter, it's the same thing. To be safe, you can always put @10, so it pulls in Angular 10. I'm just going to leave it out for now. All right, so now we are moving to Angular 10, and let us see what happens. Once again, there should be no uncommitted code. If you have uncommitted code, ng update is going to fail. So let's run this guy. We are getting close to the finish line. And once it finishes migration, we'll have to test it out again. And it is quite possible we might find problems while you are actually testing the application. Well, it's failed right away. So what it is telling us is that package, I think the error message is quite easy to understand. It's telling us that the ng Bootstrap package has an incompatible peer dependency to Angular core. So the ng Bootstrap needs 8.0, but we are trying to install Angular core 10.0. So ng Bootstrap is the maximum it can tolerate is version 8 of Angular, but we're trying to install version 10, and it's not going to work. So before we migrate to version 10 of Angular, we have to do something about Angular Bootstrap. This is a third-party dependency. We have to do something about that. All right, so what can we do? So we have to essentially install a version of Angular Bootstrap that is going to work with Angular 10. To do that, we go to the npm package page for ng Bootstrap. And if I scroll down, thankfully, they list all the version compatibilities. So if I scroll down here, I can see that is telling me for Angular 10, I need ng Bootstrap of 7 and Bootstrap CSS of 4.5. Okay. So we need to migrate, we need to upgrade ng Bootstrap to version 7. And Bootstrap CSS to version 4.5. Okay, so let me go to, I'm sorry, this is dev dependencies. I need to go up. Angular Bootstrap and Bootstrap. Okay. So for Angular Bootstrap, I choose 7. I don't worry about the minor version and patch version. You can also do things like this. And for the Bootstrap CSS, I think the version was 4.5. So for Bootstrap CSS, I move it to 4.5. All right, so I updated the version here. I need to install them. So basically, if you have any third-party dependencies, you need to bring them up as well. Okay, so that went well. Now I can run the upgrade process one more time. So hopefully this will move to Angular 10. Oh, I have to commit git add. Okay, let's try again. So it's looking like it's looking good now. And as soon as this finishes, we're going to test the application and make sure it's working fine. We might find problems at that level, at that stage. All right, so the migration completed fine. So we're in version 10. Let me see what changed. So we have a few more changes, mostly in package.json. So let's take a look at it. If I go to package.json, and you can see now we are in version 10. Everything is in version 10. So good. I'm going to commit the code. And now I can test it out. So let's run npm start to see if the application is working same as before. My backend service is still running. All right, so far so good. It has compiled everything. That's the good news. Now we can go ahead and try to access the application. Let me go back to localhost 4200 and see what happens. And nothing shows up here. So if I look at the ng-serve, I don't see any problems, but my application is not showing here. Let me see what's going on. Open the developer console and oh boy. I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me see if I can increase the size. So there is a problem reported here. On caught error, it looks like your application or one of its dependencies is using I18N, which means internationalization. Angular 9 introduced a global localized function that needs to be loaded. Please run ng-add localize from Angular CLI. For non-CLI projects, add import to your polyfill.ts. All right. All right, so there is a problem here. Let me see if I can get more information from Angular Bootstrap. So this is the ng Bootstrap homepage. If I go to getting started now, I can see that for the installation now, they have an easy way to install ng Bootstrap. You do ng-add, ng Bootstrap, and so on. So when you do ng-add, it actually does several different things. You don't have to worry about all that. So it's a shortcut for installing multiple packages, making changes to your project, etc. So this was not available in the older days, so I had to manually install ng Bootstrap. But now they have a high-level tool for installing it. Fortunately, if I scroll down, it says manual installation. It says add Bootstrap and ng Bootstrap dependencies to your package JSON. I have already done that. Okay, this part is already done and it's up to date. Then it's saying install the polyfill Angular localize. I have not done that. So that's a new thing. So I need to take care of it. So if I scroll down, it says install the polyfill using ng-add Angular localize, which is exactly the, let me copy this, which is exactly the message I'm getting over here. It's telling me to use ng-add Angular localize. So both sources of information are compatible with each other. We can confidently try that out. Let me go over here in the development server and install this localized polyfill. And hopefully it's going to work after that. Okay, so that is done, and let me see if the app is going to work now. If it works, I'm going to commit the changes. Okay, so that is taken care of. Now, hopefully it's already working. So the app is working. Let me see if I can do a few things. So I added that last book. Let me see if I can edit this. Learn advanced C programming, save it. So that's working. So the app is working fine at this point. I can delete it. And it's working great. So that's good news. Our migration is complete. I'm going to commit the changes. All right, so now git checkout. Master, and I can merge my Angular 10 changes into master and get ready for deployment. Hopefully there are no. So one thing is when you are doing this migration, other developers can be adding new features, which is going to really make things very difficult for you. There has to be a feature freeze for about a week while you are doing this migration, which goes without saying. So, all right, so I'm going to merge this and um, all right, so now my master branch is up to date with Angular 10. Any questions so far? So this essentially ends the exercise. So let's go through the changes we did. So let's summarize what we did. We upgraded NG to V10. That's the first thing we did. Then upgrade application to latest Angular 8. Then upgrade application to Angular 9. Then we upgraded third-party packages such as ng Bootstrap. And finally, we upgraded to Angular 10. So as you can see, the process wasn't entirely trivial. And so one recommendation will be that every time Angular comes up with a new version, try to catch up. Don't fall too far behind. In this example, we are 2 levels behind. So we're in version 8 and we have to go to 10. So try to catch up. As soon as a new version of Angular comes up, try to upgrade. So that'll be far less painful than if you are too far behind and then you have to do a catch up. And that's going to require many more steps. What are some of the differences between 8, 9, and 10? So the bulk of the changes between 8 to 10 are the build system. So the build system is getting better and better at eliminating dead code or code that's not necessary. So the reason behind all that is that if you can eliminate dead code, then your output, the build output, which is what we are doing right now, is going to be smaller. So they are trying to optimize the build output. So there's a lot of work that's going in. So that's number one. Another enhancement in the build process is that they are trying to catch as many problems as possible while you're building. Because as you know, in Angular, some of the problems don't surface until you actually load the application in a web browser. Like it just happened a few minutes ago, we saw the problem with polyfill wasn't discovered while we were building. That was reported on the browser. That's not an ideal situation. Ideally, would like to see all the problems surfaced while you are building. So that's another thing they've been working on. So that's called ahead of time compilation, where everything all your templates and everything gets compiled by the build process ahead of time before the application is loaded in the browser. So by doing that, they are trying to catch more problems. They are not completely there. There are still problems that are only surfaced while you are loading the application in a browser. So you need to kind of go through the actual user testing as well. So those are the two main changes. Other than that, they deprecated some of the older ways of doing dependency injection that nobody should be using right now anyways. We don't really teach how to do those old things, old way of doing it. But if you have any code that still works in, using the Angular 4 or 6 ways of doing injection, they are fully deprecated and discontinued at this point. So those are the main changes at this point. So the bulk of the changes are in the build system. All right, so now our build is done. So we need to deploy this. So what I need to do, so if I look at the folder structure, so this biblio folder, ls biblio, this was my build output. And you can see that bunch of HTML files and JavaScript files and CSS files got created. This is my build output. This is what I need to deploy in production. All right. So in production, you don't need Node or anything installed. You just need a static web server. So I'm going to go to my web server's document root, cd var. So now imagine that I'm now in my production machine. Okay. So in the production machine, only thing you need installed is Apache. There is no need for Node or anything installed there. So var www HTML is the document root. What I do is I deploy the build output here, sudo move Angular example biblio. So the entire build output I'm deploying in production. So that is essentially what deployment is. I simply copied the build output folder into the document root. That's it. Now let's try it out, see how this works. So now I go to localhost biblio, refresh, and it kind of sort of working, but why am I not seeing the couple of books I had in the library? I'm not seeing that. That is not a good sign. So let me go to the console. So it's telling me something is 404. If I go to network, let me refresh the page. It's telling me that this get books is giving me 404. So the backend call /books get call is failing. It's giving me 404. So can somebody tell me what the problem is? So the Angular application, although it's loaded up fine, it's having trouble making calls into the backend. So the reason is that the backend is listening on port 3000. Remember, the backend is listening on port 3000, and now my application is loaded using port 80, and the backend is inaccessible using this URL over port 80. So we need to create a proxy from Apache to the backend. So let's do that. Let me go to Apache configuration file, which is in etc. And again, these settings are going to be different if you use Nginx or IIS. The settings are going to be different, but conceptually, the steps are going to be the process is going to be similar. The exact nature of the steps are going to be different. Sites available. So then I open sudo vi, open this guy. I need to punch a hole through this and go to the backend web service. To do that, I need to create a proxy. So it's saying the proxy path. So if there is a call coming in for /books, route it to the backend, which is localhost 3000. And for proxy path to work, there are a couple of modules we need to enable. These are already enabled, but I'm going to show you the command anyways. So for proxy to work, let me save this guy, save and quit. So for the proxy to work, you need a couple of Apache modules, and these modules are proxy and proxy HTTP, and you can install them using sudo a2 enable mod, proxy sudo a2 enable mod, proxy HTTP. These two are already taken care of. I don't have to install it. So anyway, the important thing is that I have punched a hole, and it's now going to route all the calls to books to the backend web service. All right, so let's restart sudo apache ctl restart, and it has restarted. Let me go and refresh. And now the backend calls are working, and I can see the books are coming in here. I should be able to add a new book. Yeah, teach yourself digging a hole in case you need to know how to do that. And that seems to be working just fine. Okay, so we are almost there. We have 1 minute left. I'll show you a problem. So when I go click on edit, for example, now I have routed to deep inside the application. If I shared the link with somebody, this link, and they click on the link, which I can simulate by just copying it and pasting it in a tab. So what happens is that I get a 404. That's not a very good sign, because Apache web server says, hey, I don't know anything about this URL. I don't know what you're talking about. So it doesn't work. So what we need to do is we need to set up a fallback resource. We have to say that if a URL is not known, simply load the index HTML. Restart Apache. Now if I go to this deep link, it's going to work just fine. So notice that it loaded up and it's working just fine. So these are some of the things you have to do when it comes to deploying an application in production. All right, so thank you for coming, and it's exactly 1 o'clock. Thank you for coming, and I hope this discussion was useful. So first we discussed how to upgrade an application from 8 to 10, and then we learned how to deploy an Angular application in production. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.